Javon Porter is a Missouri Tiger. What do you think? Because I have some other questions. Let's talk about them right now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And I want to talk about Eli Drinkwitz saying that 2025, his most talented roster ever. Want to get into that statement. And also, you know what? If Coach Prime out in Colorado agrees with me on my kooky spring football ideas, well, maybe they aren't so kooky after all. But you know what? Obviously, we need to start here with the first addition in the transfer portal for Dennis Gates and Missouri basketball. And I guess to not a huge shock here, it is Javon Porter. Although I have to admit I'm a little bit surprised by this, especially with how quickly it came upon us and how quickly, well, Jevon is now signed, sealed, and delivered to Columbia, Missouri, his hometown. Mizzou, obviously his father coached there. His older brothers both played there, Jonte and Michael, very, very abbreviated stays at the University of Missouri, unfortunately. But, you know, it looked like Jevon was going to be a Tiger last season before, well, all the Jonte Porter and, more importantly, his own drama came about. Jevon, of course, got a DUI last year, about this time last year, last April in Columbia. But it seemed like that derailed any plans on Jevon potentially coming to Missouri. But from my perspective, obviously, I keep saying obviously. I'll just say from my perspective, I think clearly he deserves a second chance. I have said, though, that you know, there'd be a lot less pressure on him anywhere else but Columbia, Missouri. He's just kind of another guy most other places. Well, the Porters, you know, for obvious reasons, have a lot of mind share in this particular area and importantly for this particular university. But so I'm really going to be interested to hear what Jevon has to say in the coming days and weeks here. Why does he want to come to Missouri? Why does he want to come to Columbia? Obviously, I don't want to put any words into his mouth or anything like that. So I just think that'll be a fascinating thing if he wants to, you know, whatever it is, it'll just be interesting to hear. Let's put it that way. But most interestingly to me, is Javon Porter an SEC quality player? Does he add value to the University of Missouri roster? Well, obviously Dennis Gates thinks so because he took him very, very quickly. It doesn't appear there were any other suitors for Javon Porter that I've seen at this point. So basically, it seemed like a done deal from the very beginning here, if you read between the lines. So this is somebody that Dennis Gates wanted, which on paper surprises me a little bit. I have to say, Javon Porter at Loyola Marymount and at Pepperdine was frankly a low efficiency scorer. And last year in particular at Loyola Marymount, in a season where you'd like to see Porter having his best season ever, well, statistically, especially on offense, probably his worst season ever. Now, there are some circumstances here. Javon Porter took a lot of his team's possessions, a lot of his team's shots. That's not necessarily going to be the case in Columbia. I think he's going to be much more of a role player. Mark Mitchell, for example, is going to be getting a lot more of the offensive share than Javon Porter will. So context, as always, is incredibly important here. I'll just say that Javon Porter has not been a statistically great three-point shooter in his career either. You just wonder how much of that is off the dribble numbers versus catch and shoot. Knowing Dennis Gates like I do, if I'm a betting man, I have to bet that Javon Porter's catch and shoot three-point numbers are quite a bit better than when he's doing it off the dribble, when he's the primary offensive option. Because I think for Missouri, I'm guessing Dennis Gates pictures Javon Porter as a guy who's going to space the floor for Missouri. Because as much as I know Dennis Gates loves Josh Gray, I love Josh Gray, we all love Josh Gray, I think when you see Josh Gray playing 6 minutes against a team that he could have physically dominated in Drake, well, there's a good reason for that. It's because, agree with him or not, Dennis Gates really prioritizes offense, and especially floor spacing to make offense easier for all of his perimeter players. Not just, hey, I want guys who can literally make a three-point shot, but the spacing that particular skill provides. I think that's what Dennis Gates sees in Javon Porter. It's just surprising to me that on paper, I'm not really seeing the total offensive dynamism here. And if anything, I think Porter's numbers have sort of regressed over the years. And really, when you look at it against, especially this past season, against Tier A, Tier B type of competition, the best type of teams that Porter is going to play in the West Coast Conference, well, the numbers started ticking down there as well. So I'm not trying to throw complete cold water on everything. I'm just expressing genuine surprise here. I just have to be honest with all of you. And this is all based on paper stuff. And the games aren't played on a spreadsheet, so I am going to do a lot more Javon Porter homework here over the coming days. Actually watch him play some basketball at Pepperdine. Provide my own context here, and hopefully when I do, I'll have some more bullish thoughts for you that probably align more with what Dennis Gates and his staff are thinking, because obviously this is a priority addition here for the Tigers. This isn't just some guy they're throwing in at the 11th hour. This is somebody they really wanted, not only this season, but last season as well. So basically what I'm saying is, hopefully Dennis Gates knows something that I don't. And speaking of the Porter family, well, how about Auntie Robin? Yes, Robin Pingeton, you may have seen, is now the head coach at Wisconsin, which I got to say, when I saw that come across my social media feed, I stopped for a second and went, oh, good for Robin. She's going to be an assistant coach at Wisconsin. And then I went, wait a minute, that says she's going to be the head coach at Wisconsin? Honestly, that's almost a better job than Missouri after all these years at Missouri and it never quite coming together outside of the Sophie Cunningham era. I have to say, am I the only one who was surprised by that particular outcome? Don't get me wrong, good for Robin Pingeton. Hopefully she does well there. And speaking of women's basketball, well, the amount of money that Kelly Harper is getting, I believe about $900,000 or so, and close to another $1 million for her assistant coaching pool. Well, that raised some eyebrows among some Mizzou fans, and I get that. Some of them just look at it as, well, you're kind of just throwing good money after bad, that type of deal. You're never going to really make money in women's basketball, more than likely. This is their perspective, so what's the point in even trying, essentially? I get that perspective. I really do. But the other question, I have a couple questions then. What does it cost to make any other of the non-revenue sports good? Like baseball, for instance. I think it's going to take a much, much larger than $2 million investment, for example, to make any kind of big impact on the Missouri baseball program. And the other factor is, well, I know that it seems like the rules are just completely out the window here in the post-COVID college sports world. But correct me if I'm wrong, Title IX is still the law of the land, is it not? Correct me if I'm wrong. So if Missouri is spending $1 bajillion on its football team and its basketball program, at a certain point, you do have to spend something on the women's side, don't you? So to me, again, what would you rather spend it on? If you're saying, well, I'd rather spend it on gymnastics and volleyball, hey, I'll listen to that argument. But I think the idea that, well, you can just tank all of women's sports, I just don't think that's actually a realistic assessment of the situation. And with Brady Cook, Luther Burden, Theo Weiss, among others, off to try their talents at the NFL and whatever their next step in life is, it really does feel like a new era of Missouri football. But after 2023, several NFL draft picks as well, Cody Schrader, again, among many others. Eli Drinkwitz saying, though, this 2025 team could be his most talented ever. Do I agree with that assessment? Well, I'm going to say yes and no, and I'll explain why. But first, Supply House is the place where you need to get supplies from the site made for the skilled professionals. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. With a complete inventory of more than 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. And if you need help with an order, well, Supply House offers expert support. We're talking their free Trade Master program offering exclusive perks, a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and all kinds of discounts. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Well, now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use a promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. And have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where the heck did all my money go? Well, between dining out, online shopping, and yes, inflation, dun, 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 it's easy to use track. Well, that's where Monarch Money comes in. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. Track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. And since I brought up Eli Drinkwitz's words, let's just get him exactly correct. I'll quote him here. He says, "I'll tell you what," and this is a bold statement, but I would say this is the most talented football team I've had at the University of Missouri, to whom much is given, much is required, and I've put a lot on our coaching staff to get the most out of this team. This was with Paul Feinbaum, by the way, on the SEC Network. I'm incredibly excited about the talent that we've acquired on this football team, and I'm bullish on our ability defensively. I think we're going to have one of the best defenses we've had since I've been here. I think we've got pros on every position on our defense. I think we're as deep as we've ever been defensively. And I'm very, very excited about the transfer additions that we had, the players that we have returning. You know, I got to say, I agree with a heck of a lot of that, especially the part about how bullish Eli is on the Missouri defense. So let's just take it sort of step by step here. I think the Missouri front four, the defensive line, I think we're loaded. I think we're loaded at linebacker as well. And really, the safety position, for all the questions we might have there, I think Missouri did about as well as you could have possibly expected, with multiple Power 5 caliber type athletes added at that position in particular. I think Missouri did extremely well there. If anything, I think the corner position is still a bit of a question mark. You add Stephen Hall in the portal, you've got to think, hey, he's probably going to be more of a contributor than Marcus Clark was last season, who was a very not much of a contributor last season. So you would hope that you'd get more out of Stephen Hall. I still think that group is a little bit of a question mark, remains to be seen. And offensively, you know, I like the receivers. I think the running back position should be strong. I think Ahmad Hardy in particular is going to be a stud. But when you look at quarterback and offensive line, how can you really call either one of those positions anything but a question mark at this point? Of course, it's either going to be Prabula or Horn as your starter, perhaps Drew Pine if you want to go there as well, or even Matt Zollers. Regardless of any of those guys, Pine is the only one with any serious experience at the position. So it's obviously a huge question mark there. In the offensive line, with three starters, new starters to break in, got to be considered a pretty big question mark at this point, I would say, despite, again, there's some Power 5 guys added on the offensive line up front as well. For some reason, I just trust more of what we're getting at linebacker, for example, at defensive end with Damon Wilson from Georgia, for example. So what I'm really getting to here is I think if all positions were created equally, then I think, yes, this probably is maybe the most talented roster that Eli's ever had. I think you could make that case. The problem is not all positions are equally important. Obviously, quarterback is the most important position of all, and I would put offensive line and cornerback right up there with them. Obviously, quarterback's way up here. In the next tier, to me, it's pass rush, offensive line, and then your outside corners. Well, 3 of those 4 are a bit of a question mark to me, and one of them, the pass rush, well, appears to be quite good at the moment. We should be in good shape there. So that's good news. Now, the really good news is if those other spots that I'm sort of questioning at this point, not really willing to go one way or the other, if they can start tipping toward the bullish side as well, well, we could be in for yet another special Missouri season. And with 7 of the 16 teams in the round of 16 here in the NCAA tournament, how's that SEC bias argument working? I got to say that was one of the stupidest things I've seen in a long, long time. I do understand why people get sick of hearing about the SEC supremacy, but in this particular season, well, when the numbers themselves are agreeing with the talking points, maybe the talking points sometimes are just right. You know, conventional wisdom, it isn't always right, but sometimes it is right too, folks. So it is okay to just see things for what they are. And speaking of odd arguments, well, I mentioned Dan Shaughnessy recently, a longtime Boston Globe columnist, talking about his newfound disdain for the new NCAA tournament. Well, some of his arguments I understood. I got to say, one of them that just landed with a thud to me, just the idea that, well, these 5-year players, these 6-year players, that type of thing, as if UConn last year should apologize for winning the NCAA championship with multiple 5-year guys or something like that. I thought that was a pretty bizarre take, especially when the lion's share of these guys, I think the vast, vast majority of those 5-year guys, well, they're playing their 5th year because the COVID year. That was a year that didn't count for every single person. So if you want to take that extra year, that's up to you, considering all of the, well, let's just put it this way. Going to college, having one of your years plus of college being during the COVID era, that was a tough draw. It really was. That was tough luck for those kids. So the idea that we should be like wagging our fingers at them for what? Taking another year of college basketball and making a little money on top of it and winning a national championship with their buddies. Is that what I'm supposed to be mad about, Dan Shaughnessy? I thought you didn't like guys jumping around everywhere, but somehow if they want to stick around college longer, that's a problem too. I guess maybe part of it is, I don't know, I've seen, don't get me wrong, when Charles Barkley does his Dr. Caleb Love jokes, those are kind of funny, but the whole idea that, Missouri should apologize because Caleb Grill's been around a long time or something. I don't know, I found all of that pretty bizarre, to be honest with you, but speaking of some bizarre pushback, well, I had a lot of pushback when I suggested that, hey, what if Missouri and other teams actually played another team during spring football, not just intra-squad scrimmages, which are now apparently off for at least the next couple years, and I've argued probably forever here at the University of Missouri. Well, maybe Missouri could actually play another team. Maybe Missouri State, an FCS squad, that type of deal. Well, I was called an idiot by some. Well, is Coach Prime an idiot too? Because Deion Sanders is looking in to a similar thing. So let's talk about it on the other end of this break. Now, the fact that Deion Sanders appears open to the idea of practicing and having a game against another program. I think Syracuse's head coach was going along with this idea as well, at least in theory. Well, again, Deion says here, quote, I would like to practice against someone for a few days. Then you have the spring game, and I think the public will be satisfied with that tremendously. Oh my God, what a concept. Deion Sanders, everybody. He might actually be onto something. The sarcasm here clearly, just so we're clear, not directed toward Deion Sanders, but just the sport in general. Wow, somebody's actually thinking of the fans? My whole point here is just seems like for the last few years, it's all about, the universities versus the players and who's right and who's wrong. Whose side are you on? Are you on the players' side or are you on the administration side? This type of deal. Well, what about the fans? Aren't we the ones who basically make all of this possible? So it is nice to see Deion Sanders actually taking that angle a little bit. And by the way, maybe not just bashing your head against your own team during that period, but having some practices as teams do in the NFL all the time, by the way. Not every NFL team. I think Andy Reid is kind of famously against that whole deal of having teams come and practice against his team in the preseason, that type of deal, training camp, all of that type of thing. So not everybody is going to do this. I understand that. And maybe Eli Drinkwitz won't be interested in that. Maybe he'll be more of the Andy Reid type. But I just have to say and point out that maybe my idea of having spring football shaken up here a little bit, maybe it's not the craziest thing in the entire world, because for all of the objections that I got in my comments about injury risk, well, I'm sorry, anytime you practice football, you have injury risks. Otherwise, well, let's just never practice tackling ever. Let's never even run and make a cut for that matter, because God forbid somebody's knee gives out when they're just running around in their shells, that type of deal. I understand that there's always going to be risk in football, and maybe the risk is a little bit higher against another team. I can recognize that. But there's also the risk of sucking. There's the risk of being bad at football. If Deion Sanders thinks this is beneficial for his squad to win more games, well, he's probably going to do it. Bottom line. And yeah, if the public is going to be, quote, satisfied with that tremendously as well, that's definitely the cherry on top of the sundae. Speaking of Sunday, a guy who played on Sundays and is just, taking an idea from the NFL, as, well, we seem to be doing a lot here in this post-COVID era. And finally, just one more comment here that did amuse me. This is actually from a week or two back now at this point, but I did want to save it for a rainy day. And here it is. Carl says, "Hey, nerd." First of all, tough way to start a comment there, Carl, but hey, nerd. Where did you get the Missouri Heavyweight Championship? I want one. Well, if you're going to make a request like that, maybe be a little bit more polite next time. And forgive me for 1 second as I reach behind myself. Ah, yes. There we go. Indeed, Carl, you are eagle-eyed. This is indeed the Missouri Heavyweight Championship, held by such luminaries as Bob Orton Sr., Harley Race, Terry Funk, Dory Funk Jr., Dick Slater, Ted DiBiase, Dick Murdoch, Kevin Von Erich, Dick the Bruiser, and none other than the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. Now, as to the idea of you won it, well, there's only one way to get one, bud. You got to beat me for it. You got to pin me. You got to submit me. And the only way that the title changes hands, by the way, is those two ways. Not countouts, not disqualifications. So there, Carl, nerd, come bring it. And with all that being said, hope you enjoyed this edition of Locked On Mizzou. And as always, check out Locked On College Basketball with Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. March is here. Be the smartest college basketball fan there is. Find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. So until next time, I'm John Miller. Thanks for listening to Locked On Mizzou.